Hey everyone, welcome back to AZ Update. I'm your host, Anthony Bartolo, and today we're joined by my co-host, Producer Pierre. Producer Pierre, say hi to everybody.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? Okay, I understand that there's a little glitch on the stream. We apologize for that. Hopefully everybody can join us in this particular instance of it.
As you know, even though we're on episode 24, we're still learning. We're still trying to flush out all the bugs. Hats off to Producer Pierre to acting quickly to get this up and running. As Richard Hooper's mentioned in the chat. Wow, I'm tongue-tied today. The third time is a charm. We're up and running now. The stream is running. If you're unable to watch it via the live stream, we will have this recorded, of course, and embedded in a blog post on itopstock.com, which you can then also go through the links that we share in regards to the stories that we're talking about on the show.
Yeah. Speaking of things on our minds, I'm a little...
Speaking of addressing gremlins, right?
Addressing gremlins, I've been looking at building a new machine, and I have a moral dilemma.
Yeah, we've been talking about this behind the scenes. You know, we're doing the broadcast with what equipment we have, and we're not production studio savvy. We're getting there, and man, Producer Pierre, from the first episode to where we're at now, big difference in terms of quality, but we're still kind of bootstrapped with the hardware that we have in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
And so the folks at Microsoft, love what we're doing, and they're investing in us, which is awesome. So we're going to be getting new equipment really soon. But we're looking at the build outs, and this is something that we're going to ask for input from the chat room. And by the way, hi, Richard Hooper, and sorry for saying your name wrong. And Andrew McCollum,
Andrew.
Welcome as well. Love your input on this. So Pierre, take it away. What are we looking at in terms of new hardware?
So do I go with the X570 chipset and get a 3000 level Ryzen processor, or do I wait for the 5000s? And do I go with the NVIDIA 2080, or do I wait until there's actually stock for the 3080 or the 3070s? Because apparently the 3070 is going to be more powerful than the 2080 at a cheaper price. So decisions.
Well, let's go through the first part of this, right? So the 570 chipset, we're talking AMD. I'm, mostly an Intel guy. I've had i7s. We were also specking out i9s, but unfortunately, because of inventory levels, we're not going to be able to go that route. With the 570, what is the advantages that brings to the table when looking at that platform?
PCI 4 is a big thing. The next generation of CPUs. One thing that I've got in the back of my mind, but I don't think it's going to happen just yet, is there's a new standard for power consumptions on motherboards. So instead of having the PSU split it between 12 volts, 5 volts, 3 volts, it's going to be 12 volts on the motherboard, and the motherboard will divvy up what the voltage is through all of the components. So all of these things, I'm like watching a whole lot of YouTubes, and I'm reading a ton of documentation on hardware, and this pandemic is not really helping because everything is out of stock everywhere. And then if there is stock, it's like they're gouging us for the prices. So I'm not quite sure what to do.
So Richard has chimed in on the chat saying that he would wait. The scenario is, though, that we've been working with what we have for the last 4 months in terms of the show, and we've had our challenges. As recently as Ignite, my setup completely crashed. It's too much for it. Microsoft was nice enough to say, hey, here's a couple of peripherals that'll help you out. And so I was able to actually run out last night and buy them because I was actually on Azure Fun Bites yesterday with Jay, and my setup completely died for the umpteenth time. And it was like enough, and was able to run out to the local electronics store and buy the hardware that I needed as a patch, not a switch. and a you like that one, eh?
Yeah, I'm
So we're up and
sure.
running. But I want to make sure that when we put the investment forward in terms of the new hardware, it's something that will provide us that, because we're going to have this new hardware for a while.
That's right. And we're not saying that the hardware we have is bad. It's just not spec'd for the type of work that we now have to do during the pandemic.
And
Anyway,
the hardware we were supplied was specifically for us doing the tour, right? So
traveling,
we were
so light,
right. So we
light
were
and fast, but
correct.
no, the GPUs were not intended for streaming and coding. The video cameras that are in our laptops are not intended to be show quality or broadcast quality. And running Teams and OBS and everything else on a single little laptop overwhelms the USB because of all the peripherals we have to plug in. It's great. They're great machines. They're just not designed for what we need right now.
And this is part of the challenge that a lot of IT professionals are facing right now. When the pandemic occurred, when it started, everybody was caught flat-footed. We were all set up to work in a specific way, people traveling into offices and what have you. And then everything changed like within an overnight period. And, a lot of IT professionals are doing what they can with what they have to accomplish what was done prior to and not lose any business or not lose any productivity. It's not an easy thing. So, in terms of, and Richard chimes in, he loves the fact that we have glitches on the show, it makes it more real, doesn't show that we're doing this high production type of scenario. Andrew calls out Linus Tech Tips, which is something that we've been watching as well. He's Canadian, yeah. So
he's Canadian, he's from Vancouver.
It's another great show. Paul Jensen chimes in that pandemic gouging will cost another 30 to 40% on most new gear.
Yeah.
We're in a new world, right? This is the thing. This is what we have to abide by. And when changes like this happen, changes happen like this all around the world. And as IT professionals, we have to be smart about it, right? So, Microsoft provides us with our hardware. That's not kidding anybody, and they did a phenomenal job for what we were set up for when we were traveling. And, we are excited that Microsoft was good enough to say, hey, we understand that the needs have changed. We're going to outfit you with what you require. Our biggest challenge in terms of the wait and doing this over the last 4 months has been just trying to get the hardware, because the fact that when everything changed, everybody rushed out and grabbed the new hardware that would allow them to work from home, and inventory levels are low. And so, we're waiting, not because we're not getting the equipment that we need, it's because it's not available.
A funny story is I received 2 boxes yesterday. Yesterday. And my wife comes downstairs to my office and says those were at the door. And I'm like, oh, I couldn't even remember what they were. Because I ordered them like 3.5 months ago, never received them, and then somehow it just left my mind, and all of a sudden things started showing up, and I'm like, oh, I even forgot I ordered this.
Did you want to share? What did you get?
One was my my new green screen that's above me.
Oh yes, that's right.
So right now it shows black because I got the chroma key turned on.
Yep.
Ding. And the other one was a new tripod for a mobile camera.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, should we get to the news?
Let's get to the news. So the first item of the news today, you can switch us over, is a big one. Azure Communication Services is now available in preview. So what is this? If you've used Skype and if you use Teams, you have the ability to, do SMS messages, call out via voice communications made available on the services. Azure Communication Services now bundles that up as an API. And so if you want to incorporate this type of functionality inside of applications, you now have the ability to do so. It is in preview, so it hasn't gone general availability yet. So, don't put this in production. This is definitely for testing right now. But this is huge because now the same architecture that you would use for Teams in terms of your communication enablement of your organization can actually be embedded into an application natively and called through an API. So there's less switching between applications to do voice communications, or for automated responses in terms of, as an example, customer inquiries of, is my inventory in? You can have the SMS message come directly through this service to the individual, or even voice, if required, in terms of what you're offering in terms of your policies, can be done through this solution, which is awesome. And like I said, it's available in preview right now. The APIs are available to use. Do not use this in production because it's only in preview. But all the documentation pertaining to this is there. And please, 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 if you have the ability to provide your feedback in terms of, hey, this is awesome, or no, you know what, can you add this or this, or this needs to be addressed. This is the reason why we put, services like this into preview, so that you go forward and make the required inputs or recommendations in terms of how to make this better. Pierre, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. I'm just trying to fix things in the background. This is great. One of the things, and when we were talking about the pandemic earlier, one of the things that this is bringing up is, because we're the enablement of, this is your word, I'm stealing your vocabulary today, the enablement of like communication, not only on Teams, but for phones and SMS. It's one more thing that we're removing from the environment, the work environment. So you don't need to have that Bell Telecom or AT&T phone system, everything else on your desk to communicate. Like now, everything can be virtualized and just accessed as a service. So the investments in the past, like I've been around for a long time, and don't make any jokes about that. It used to be like you'd invest in a PBX and you'd know that you'd be running this thing for 15 years. And if new services and new features came out, you basically were like out of luck. But now with using this type of technology in a fast deployment and fast iteration of features and services, it's just a benefit for everyone, the remote workers and the companies that will enable it.
So that's awesome, and that's available as general preview, so definitely check it out. Really quickly before we go to the next news item, Pierre, there's a lot of comments on the chat in regards to your camera setup, because you look awesome. So they'd love to know what filter you're using.
I'm not using a filter. There's no filter on here. Maybe a little bit of gamma adjustments, but it's really just a Sony A6000 with a 30mm f1.4 lens. You could have the best camera in the world. If your lighting in your office is off, everything else is going to be off. So I've got my office has been turned into a TV studio. I've got lights over there, I got lights over there, I got lights here, I got backlights over there to separate me from the background, and of course I've got my my knickknacks in the back that I've lit up with some LEDs. Just a home setup.
Very fancy setup.
Very fancy setup.
Okay, let's continue on with the news. Pierre, you're next.
Yes. What are we talking about for the next one? This is, Azure TLS certificate change. This is something that has been emailed to anybody that has services in Azure. There was a blog post about it, and it's really, we are updating our use of TLS certificates to a different set of root certificate authority. What that means is, if for the great majority of customers that are using certificate services, there's not going to be any big issues. However, if you have hard-coded certificate authority that you're basically validating your certificates around, like the revocation lists and everything else, that might be affected. So we've made that announcement. We've emailed. I've actually gotten an email for my own tenant this morning, telling me that I have to go and check my certificate. So if you do get that email, or if you are using certificate services, go to that page that's in the blog post. Follow the steps in order to update the certificates that you're running in your enterprise. That way, you're not going to end up with one day with an invalid certificate and your services stopped working.
So this again is it only a concern for those that have hard coded the certificates in, or should all go out and test to make sure that the certificates are still working for them?
Really, if you have proper certificate management, you should be able to just kind of get a new one and then push it out. However, it's a good idea to go and to validate that your certificates are still valid and that the validation chain behind them is also valid. And if you're there and there is a problem or you're not quite sure, then go ahead and update your certificate and roll them out.
And what's great is on docs.microsoft.com, which is what we shared on itopsdoc.com, the direct link to this, it gives you the step-by-step instructions on how to correct this and address this in regards to your use of certificates.
Yeah, because it's the certificates will still be running. It's just that the background or the set of root certificate authorities that we're using is changing. So if you have a certificate, typically that'll auto update. It'll get the set of root authentication authorities or certificate authorities. But if you've hard coded certain ones, then you have to check.
So let's continue on with the news.
Yep.
So going from preview now to general availability, we have the conditional access made available on Office 365 for all cloud apps and actions. This is big. If you are currently dabbling in governance, you know that prior to it was specifically on Azure services that you can enable and disable resources as required and provide the least amount of access to your end users in regards to resources like creation of new resources, creation of new services, and what have you. This is now being brought over to Office 365. This has been actually in general preview since February. And so now it's exciting that this has actually gone GA, has now gone to production. Alex Simons actually announced it yesterday on social media, and we provided a link directly to his announcement on the blog. But I wanted to show you the docs.microsoft.com page that highlights in regards to the steps to take advantage of the new conditional access capabilities. This availability, like I said, it's the services specifically to apps on Office 365. This includes Outlook, it includes Teams, it includes all the applications attached to Office 365 that your users can now be governed over in regards to usage, creation of new assets. If you're creating new Word documents, where those Word documents have to reside, or can a Word document even be created? In regards to the applications, what locations can these applications be run on? Do they have to be on specific subnets because of security? All this capability, all this governance enablement made available now through conditional access.
Well, access in general is always a challenge. How to define your environment so that the right data is accessed by the right people at the right time and in the right conditions. Users will always take the path of least resistance. So if you let them pick and choose, it's gonna be wide open, and then something bad will happen at some point. I can guarantee it. If you make it too restrictive, then they'll find other ways, and that's how shadow IT starts, because they find it's too restrictive internally. So if I can't share that document with Richard, for example, I'll just drop it on like Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive personal, like something that's not managed by the company, and then therefore that data is no longer secured. So this is a great way, like conditional access is a great way to enforce proper governance, if you will, in a way that is pretty much transparent to the users, but also that secures and protects the enterprise from data and application being accessed from things that are not, and especially in this time, in this day and age, where most people are working from home, from machines that are unknown. So you want to make sure that if there's no antivirus on that machine, or if it's not patched properly, then you can't access the data. So that's great, in my opinion.
And what's super awesome about this is there's a plethora of applications that are governed over this.
Here's
like
that word again.
Azure DevOps. We're talking Dynamics CRM. We're talking Microsoft Flow, Microsoft Forms, Intune, Power Apps, Stream, Teams, SharePoint, Yammer. Like, there's a full gamut of applications in regards to the governance aspect that you can apply to really, it's don't think of it as you're locking down your users. Think of it so there's less mistakes that occur at your organization and less information being leaked. Because we're in this pandemic and people are working remotely, there is more opportunity for mistakes to happen. And so because of this, you have the ability with these tools to ensure that less mistakes happen. And it safeguards your users from getting in trouble in the future.
Yeah, well, it's a great segue into our next item. But the fact that manual processes tend to break because of human error. When you're looking at hard-coded, or not hard-coded, infrastructure as code or policy as code that is automatically applied, so you define it and apply it and it takes care of itself, then you have less of a chance of actually breaking something or something getting missed because it's not done manually. And that kind of leads us to the next one, is if we are looking at policies, and this was brought up by our friend Richard Hooper on our Discord server. And by the way, if you're not on our Discord server, aka.ms/itopstalk-discord, it's a community-based environment that we have set up during Ignite, but it's going to go on. It's going to live on for as long as we possibly can keep it up. And it's just a great location for all of you and us to talk together on an ongoing basis, so we don't have to worry about or wait till the next Ignite, because, of course, the next one is going to be virtual again. So this is a great way for like those hallway conversation. Anyway, back to the topic. You can now manage your Azure policies as infrastructure as code. So you define your policies in a file or a JSON, and you put that into your GitHub. It could be your private GitHub, hopefully your private GitHub if it's a policy for your enterprise. And then you can use GitHub Action to actually push that to your environment based on changes that are occurring. So as you're evolving your policies and updating that code, it automatically will go and get applied to your environment using GitHub Action. So GitHub Action, a little bit like our Azure DevOps, is just a way to automate the deployment of resources in Azure or everywhere else. GitHub Action is on GitHub DevOps. Azure DevOps, of course, is on. So the lines are getting blurred a little bit, but you can deploy those using both. But now you can officially manage your Azure policies as code on GitHub and using GitHub Action to deploy them to your environments. So this is really cool.
And it's cool because it's that ability to create versions of your policies, and should your policy not stick or cause issues in terms of production or your environment, you have the ability to roll back to previous versions. And the fact that you can push it out directly from GitHub, just to keep everything up to date, that's phenomenal.
Repos, GitHub repos are great for that. We've all had our USB keys and our little folders with our scripts and our ARM templates or whatnot. But every time you make a change, like what did I change? Can I get back? Can I roll back? GitHub repos are a godsend for IT people and for developer. It helps in so many ways. It sometimes is a bit of a learning curve to learn all of the Git commands. I'm going through that right now on some other projects where I've got conflicts and I'm not quite sure how to resolve them. But once that's done, it works beautifully. And we only have 4 minutes left, so let's get on to the news.
So let's talk about events now. And so wanted to highlight 2 events that are going on. Yesterday actually was the Azure Fun Bites episode with Jay Gordon, where I was actually able to sit in and talk about AI for ops and showcase an example of custom vision. So if you have a sec and you want to check out the recording, twitch.tv/Azure Fun Bites. The next event that's also occurring, that's coming up, is the Windows Server Summit that's happening on Thursday, October 29th. And this is, again, an online thing that you can actually join up for. Pierre, actually, you brought this to our attention in regards to the events that are occurring. This is about Windows Server, right? So we're talking about the hybrid implementation of Windows Server, how you can enable the workload through Windows Server, increase your security, leveraging on Azure best practices and even Azure tools. Anything else you want to add in terms of this event?
There's going to be, there should be a good opportunity is that way during that summit as well to ask questions and get some answers and really get a bit more details into the technical part, the technical end of Windows Server, as you mentioned, Azure Stack, HCI, Windows Admin Center, the latest versions, and a little bit more technical details that we got during Ignite. Those 35 minutes sessions during Ignite were not the most conductive to deep technical. So when I talked to Jeff Woolsey about the summit, basically that's what he said. He's like, we're doing this post Ignite to kind of like top up the technical end that we missed during Ignite. So if you're not registered, please do so and go and check it out.
So now time for our Microsoft Learn module of the week, and we're going to continue on the theme of security and governance. Sonia Cuff has actually shared with us a great module, Build a Cloud Governance Strategy on Azure. This, again, what I love about Microsoft Learn is it's step-by-step instructional that uses sandbox technology to allow you to actually go forward and append tags to resources, the ability to audit and control resources, creation of new resources based on the guidelines that are set forth through governance. If you get a second, check this out. Again, it's on itops.com to forward a link to go to this and start playing with this module. Pierre, really quickly, what I loved about this show this week was we had input from the audience. And so thank you, Richard Hooper, for bringing the Azure policy for GitOps into the fold. If there are any articles of interest, the team, we work hard to ensure that we get the best news that we think is going to be very popular or that people want to hear about on the show. But definitely, if you want to chime in and share the news with us in terms of what you think is of importance, let us know. Pierre, share that Discord link with us again.
The Discord link is aka.ms/itopstalk-discord. This is an invitation that I created with an AKA link that is not expiring. So use it. If you're not already there, come and join us. You can share it with your friends. And I'm just looking at the chat right now. Paul, you can only find the 2019 summit. Go to itopstalk.com. On the blog, there'll be a link for you to find it so you can join.
I've also shared the link for the Windows Server Summit as Paul's request on the chat room as well. So that's there available as well.
Yeah. All right. So we've got 30 seconds left.
Producer Pierre, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
At Wired Canuck on the Twitters.
And if you want to get a hold of me for some reason, you can find me on the Twitters at Wireless Life. Producer Pierre, thank you for joining us today on today's show. You still there?
I'm still there, but I think our live TV we were cut because we're 30 seconds over.
Overtime. All good.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us in today's show, and we'll see you next week.